Hi everyone, happy Friday. Today we'll be talking about pronouns and identity. I'm just going to get my fellow co hosts in the room and then we'll get started. Hey Corey, how are you?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm good. I love your tie dye.
Thank you. Nike. I actually just ordered a new one. It's like they be coming out with them like every year. So
Oh, cool.
it was from last year. I just ordered the one from this year. Where is okay? Here's Whitman-Walker did up here. Cool, cool. Um,
Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining.
and I don't know why. Like I feel like a little bit tired today. Just a little bit. Maybe I slept too much. I'm not sure.
Isn't that such a weird phenomenon? Like, if you sleep too much, you're still super sleepy. Hey Paul, how are you?
Yeah, I think I like maybe slept too much because I kind of went to bed early, so I think that's what it is. I think I might have went to bed like early, and then I don't know. So
Well, wake up. It's Friday. Hope you've got plans for your weekend.
yeah, I gotta find something to do, of course, but that's neither here or there for right now.
Well, cool. We'll get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Jewel, and I use she, her, hers pronouns. And during the past few months, Whitman-Walker's Community Health Department has expanded its outreach efforts to the social media platforms. We cover various topics from STIs and sexual health to HIV, and access to care, social determinants of health, and just general public health interventions. The community health team is here to educate and support you. Before we get started today, we just wanted to wish everyone a happy LGBTQ Awareness Week. Please feel free to take advantage of the resources that Whitman-Walker's got to offer, both on social media, on our website, and of course at our health centers, to support the health dignity and respect shown towards LGBTQ plus people. Happy LGBTQ Awareness Week.
Hello, my name is Corey Haskett. I use he, him, his pronouns, and today I will be discussing gender pronouns. And happy LGBTQ plus Awareness Week as well. Okay, what is a pronoun? A pronoun is a word that is used instead of a noun or a noun phrase to refer to an individual. Pronouns can be in the first person singular, plural, second person singular, or plural and third person singular, or just regular plural, them, they. Gender pronouns specifically refers to someone's gender: he, him, his, she, her, hers. Non-gendered or non-binary pronouns are not gender-specific and are most often used by people who identify outside of a gender binary. The most common set of non-binary pronouns is them, they, their, used in the singular. Other non-binary pronouns include the in the place of she or he, or here in the place of he, him, his. So in the context, like they would basically be like here own business, but Z is more well known as an author. The terms it, he, she are slurs used against transgender or gender nonconforming individuals and should not be used. Other approaches to pronouns may include going simply by one's name, not having a preference, or wanting to avoid pronouns altogether. There are many languages in the world that do not use gender pronouns. Why are pronouns important? It is important to ask for pronouns because you cannot assume how someone's identities, so how someone identifies their gender based on their appearance. As a society, we commonly assume the gender of others by their appearance and indicate these assumptions by using gendered language such as she/he, ma'am, sir, miss or mister, and ladies and gentlemen. These practices result in many individuals, especially trans and gender nonconforming individuals, being misgendered, which may lead to them feeling disrespected, marginalized, and invisible. It is a privilege to not worry about which pronoun someone is going to use for you based on how they perceive your gender. If you have this privilege, yet fail to respect someone else's gender identity, it is disrespectful and hurtful. You got something to add on that, Jewel? You want to, share a little story or something?
Um, yeah, having worked at Whitman-Walker for a handful of years, I think one of the things that I appreciate about the medical team and just the whole workforce in working to make sure to properly address folks by their chosen or by their pronouns is that when you fill out your registration form, you're asked for the name that you go by, the name that you were given at birth, or your original name, and as well as the pronouns that you use versus what's on file with your insurance company. Just because not all systems are caught up to date in terms of respecting people's pronouns and gender identities, and so that's one way that we work to be inclusive of folks who we serve and make sure that we're able to properly work with their insurance company for their care and whatnot, but also making sure that we're respecting them as they come into our health center as their full being and self.
Right. I completely agree. Thank you for that. Yeah, I honestly feel that in this day and age, there has been some place or somewhere where most people have had to address gender pronouns. So I think that you should carry that, that with every day. Like if you're not sure, ask. Like, and even sometimes if you are sure, still ask, because of that still making an assumption that you think that someone identifies as something, and you could be completely wrong. I've had a
Exactly.
instances, working in healthcare. I've had a many of instances where I will ask just in case, and my assumption was completely wrong, just because of off of face value or an appearance. That does not mean the person identifies that way.
Yeah, and people's pronouns change over time. People
Exactly.
we're all always changing and growing and evolving, and so we've got to be respectful of folks who are still and continuing to evolve and change their pronouns as they do.
Right. So you never can judge what a person is feeling or how a person has evolved, or whatever. And it's their life. It's that simple. It's their life. It's their identity. It's their gender. It's how they feel respected. How can I be inclusive in using and respecting gender pronouns? Respecting someone's self identification means using their gender pronouns with which they identify. Some people go by more than one set of pronouns. Again, respect. Normalize the process of indicating your gender pronouns in everyday use with strategies such as including them in your email signature, business cards, website profile, name tags, or using them as you introduce yourself. Again, my name is Corey Haskin and my pronouns are he, him, his. If you do not know or have not asked someone their pronouns, try to use them. Try to use they or them pronouns. If you're not sure, don't ever assume. Ask individuals to provide their personal pronouns. It can feel awkward at first, but it is not as awkward as getting it wrong and making a hurtful assumption. Here are some ways you can do this. What pronouns do you use? How would you like me to refer to you? Can you remind me what pronouns I should be using for you? Those are all questions. Please note that if a student, staff, or community member tells you that they do not want to disclose their pronouns or do not wish their pronouns to be public knowledge, you can refer to that person as their name only. Say, my name's Corey. If they do not wish to disclose their pronouns, only refer to that person as the name that they told you that they would like to be called. What if I mistakenly used the wrong pronouns for someone? The best thing that you can do if you use the wrong pronouns for someone is to say something right away, such as, sorry, I meant they. Fix it, but do not call special attention to the error in the moment. If you realize your mistake after the fact, apologize in private and move on. It can be tempting to go on and go on about how bad you feel that you messed up or how hard it is for you to get it right, but please don't. It is inappropriate and makes the person who was misgendered feel awkward and responsible for comforting you, which is not their job. It is your job to remember people's pronouns. If you hear someone else using the wrong pronoun, in most cases, you may gently correct the person who made the mistake without further embarrassing the individual who misgendered. You can say something like, actually, Nira uses they for themselves. How do you feel about that, Jewel?
Um, yeah, definitely have been there. Definitely have misgendered someone. Obviously not intentionally, but it's just important to apologize and quickly move on, and not draw too much attention to it, but show the person that you are respecting their pronouns and how they identify and how they choose to be referenced.
Right. Yeah. I also that actually just happened to me as well. Maybe probably about a week ago. I saw someone that I had been friends with and worked with in the past that now identifies as a transgender woman. Um, and I caught myself in the midst of it. I was about to call her her old name, and I stopped myself and I asked her, "Excuse me, what name? Basically, what name do you go by, and what are your pronouns now?" And she, informed me, and I made sure for the rest of our meeting, I made sure that I addressed her the proper way. Okay, so let's go on to pronouns, do's and do nots. Pronoun do. Do recognize that most people have pronouns, not just trans people, and that's asking pronoun, and that asking pronouns is very important. both some both so someone is not misgendered, and that trans people are not the only ones who feel they need to share their pronouns. Do remember that some people go by more than one set of pronouns. Do ask people pronouns that they use for themselves, whether you ask their name, such as when you meet someone for the first time, or when you do go arounds at meetings. Keep in mind that people change their pronouns as they go. So it is necessary to ask pronouns and a go around regularly. Do say the pronoun do say the pronouns someone's used are their personal pronouns rather than their preferred pronouns, because the pronouns someone uses are not a preference. Do remember that everyone feels comfortable indicating their pronouns at all or in every setting, and no one should feel forced to do so. Do consider using others ways to make language or gender inclusive, such as by using "Hey everyone" or "How are all y'all doing?" In a group setting, in a group setting, instead of saying "Hey guys" or "Hey ladies" or "How are you guys doing?" say the other. Don't 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 refer to pronouns such as they, them, their, or thee, here, here as gender neutral pronouns. While some people identify as gender neutral, others see themselves as gendered in a non-binary way. Better language is non better language is non-binary pronouns. Don't describe the pronouns someone uses as a preferred pronoun. It is not a preference. The pronoun that a person uses are their pronouns, and the only ones that should be used for them. Don't say male pronouns or female pronouns. Pronouns are not necessarily tied to someone's gender identity. Some trans people use he, him, his, or she, her, hers, but do not identify as male or female respectively. If you conform to most gender expectations and are not a transgender person, don't indicate that you don't care what pronouns are used for them. Such statements reinforce the privilege of people who are gender conforming and not transgender, because of these people are not going to be misgendered. Thus, don't need to worry about the other person's pronouns. How do you feel about that, Drew?
I think these are great do's and don'ts, do's and don'ts for people's pronouns, and just great guidelines to stick by. I'm really appreciative to Springfield University for this awesome
Yes.
reference and source for folks to get more educated around pronouns. And shout out to Marla in the chat. Hope you're well. It's good to see you in here.
And Marla,
Part of
yeah,
the Whitman-Walker family.
it's amazing. And like you said, I do agree that these are great. Um, just guidelines to go by, because of sometimes I don't think that people do it intentionally, but this helps. Like for some people that aren't in that space on a normal basis, they're able to just use these guidelines to be respectful as possible.
Definitely. So now we're going to get into some gender identity and how to be respectful of people's gender identity. It's important to note that gender identity is different from sexual orientation. So gender identity can be defined as the internal sense of being female, male, or non-binary. So we're going to go through a lot of terms that help describe gender identity and gender expression. But a quick disclaimer, these definitions are not to be a catch-all for every term and definition in the TLGBTQIA plus communities, but is meant to be a resource to help you better understand the uses, semantics, and backgrounds of different terms as they relate to gender. Keep in mind that when we talk about TLGBTQIA plus communities, we are talking about a gender variant and sexually variant community with differing identities of race, age, countries of origin, socioeconomic status, health needs, healthcare barriers, and more. We recognize that folks are at the margins of mainstream culture, and if they are there, they are often those defining barriers and more. Sorry, they're often those defining and redefining our human experiences first. So we believe everyone engages with gender, whether socially, personally, and or communally, and that we are all constantly learning how to describe ourselves. That said, let's get into our first word or term. This is cisgender. This term is an adjective and identifies a person who was born as one sex and identifies as the corresponding gender. So an example would be if someone who is assigned male at birth and their gender identity is man, or someone who is assigned female at birth and their gender identity is woman. Interact defines intersex as an umbrella term for differences in sex traits or reproductive anatomy. So people who are born with these differences or develop them in childhood might identify as intersex. There are many possible differences in genitalia, hormones, internal anatomy, or chromosomes. Next up, we've got men. When we say men, we're referring to transgender, gender expansive, non-binary, and cisgender folks who identify as men. All men are men. There's work happening to undo the default that men refers to cis men exclusively or cisgender men exclusively. And so some communities differentiate by saying men and cis men to shift that default to use to avoid the use of men spelled with like MXN or like MYN as what we're using to identify folks who aren't cisgender, but who identify as men. We also have non-binary, gender fluid, gender expansive, gender non-conforming, gender queer, and gender flux. All of these groupings of terms describe gender outside of the binary of man or woman. These words may hold similarities and distinct differences for individuals who identify with them or communities they describe, but not every person who identifies with one of these terms also identifies as trans. Next, we've got gender. Gender is a spectrum. There are those who identify as men and women, but there are also those who identify as somewhere in the middle or totally removed from that framework altogether. These folks often use umbrella terms like non-binary or genderqueer to identify their genders. Gender expression. This is how you express your gender in your voice, your dress, and your mannerisms or more. Gender expression has a spectrum. The gender expression spectrum is a range of gender expressions that fall between masculine and feminine. So a few examples include butch, that might be a person who is masculine of expression or personality. There's also femme. This person might be feminine of expression or personality. And then there's androgynous, and this is someone who is an expression or personality that mixes masculinity and femininity. Next up, we've got gender identity. This is the gender you identify as on a personal level. So the National Center for Trans Equality defines gender identity as your internal knowledge of your gender. For example, your knowledge that you're a man, a woman, or another gender. In contrast, gender expression is how a person presents their gender on the outside. So that could be, again, how you dress or just how you express yourself externally. On the gender identity spectrum, this is how someone visualizes gender as a continuum. This is the gender identity spectrum visualizes gender as a continuum stretching from men to woman and masculine to feminine. Gender identities other than men or women are considered non-binary. The middle range of this spectrum might include transgender, which is a more general term for those who do not identify with the gender generally associated with the sex they were assigned with at birth. Agender for those who do not identify with any gender, and then gender queer or queer for those who feel they are a combination of, between, or beyond genders. And then Corey touched on this a bit as well. Misnaming and misgendering. So first up, we've got misnaming. This is when this means you're calling someone by a name other than their chosen name or the name that they go by.
Right.
We do not want to refer to people as dead names or dead naming them. This is, or sorry, we don't want to refer to this practice as dead naming someone. So this is because people can still have strong connections to the name that they were born with or the name that they were given at birth or their original name, and can still have folks in their lives who they allow to call them by that name. So misnaming is the appropriate term here. And then also misgendering, this means referring to someone by pronouns that they do not identify with or go by. So if and when this happens, again, apologize, correct yourself and pause, and move on, but do not ever assume how a person identifies, and recognize that folks' identities change throughout their lives. And, if you think that you're kind of repeatedly doing this, or you see that you are repeatedly misgendering people or misnaming them, maybe take some time to figure out why and what is causing you to misgender folks, just so that you can be more respectful for the folks that you are interacting with. Corey, how are you feeling about all of this? We're going through a lot of definitions.
For me, like for us, this is something that we do on a daily basis. So this is it's nothing new to me, but I hope the people that are tuning in are really absorbing this information and seeing that like when it comes to gender and identity and pronouns, it's such a wide spectrum. And for like the main thing is never to assume anything when it comes to a person, especially someone that you're just meeting. You have no clue who that person is. Just like how you don't know that person's name, you don't know how they identify, you don't know what they ate that day, you don't know anything about it. So why
Exactly.
assume that you know how they identify when it comes to their gender or their pronouns?
Definitely. And Gingersnaps 31 says, love the feedback on not using preferred as a qualifier for people's pronouns. I think a lot of us were taught that language 5 to 10 years ago and really need the update. Thank you for listening in here, Gingersnaps 31. We appreciate you. And yeah, just a reminder to everyone that language is always changing and evolving. Words that were used in like the 1700s sometimes aren't used today, but
Right.
words can kind of come back into the fold as culture changes and shifts. So the same thing applies here as we continue to learn together and grow together around what language is super respectful or super offensive to communities that we interact with.
Right.
Um, so next up, we've got sex assigned at birth. This refers to the assignment of sex to an infant at birth or in prenatal testing, and is usually based on the infant's genitals. Often someone is assigned male, female, or intersex. Here, sex strictly refers to biology. If on the binary of gender we have men and women, then the binary of sex includes male and female. Males are traditionally born with male chromosomes XY, gonads, sex hormones, and genitalia, and females are traditionally born with female chromosomes XX, gonads, and sex hormones and genitalia. I think in a lot of my lives, you hear me say things like AFAB or AMAB, or I think I spell it out with like assigned female at birth or assigned male at birth. So just heads up on that language as well. For sexual orientation, this is a spectrum. A person's sexual orientation can change throughout their life, and that's completely okay. Sexual orientation can be defined as patterns of sexual, romantic, and emotional attractions. One sense of identity is based on those attractions. So, according to GLAD, sexual orientation is the scientifically accurate term for an individual's enduring physical, romantic, and/or emotional attraction to members of the same and/or opposite sex, including lesbian, gay, bisexual, and heterosexual or straight orientations. We've got a few more to go, everyone. We've got transgender. This term is an adjective to describe people who have a personal identity and gender that does not correspond with the sex assigned at birth. We want to highlight that no one must prove that they are transgender, and that there is no way to be transgender, or no one way to be transgender.
Right.
Not every trans person changes their body, expression, or identity documents, and their trans experience is still valid.
Right.
Transgender man, when we say transgender men, we're referring to folks who were assigned female as their sex at birth, but who identify as men and could choose to participate in associated pelvic care, like gynecological care and breast and chest health care, as they might still need that health care. So,
Right.
yeah. And then we've got transgender woman. When we say transgender woman, we're referring to folks who were assigned male as their sex at birth, who identify as women and could choose to participate in associated pelvic care. So this is like prostate care and, again, breast or chest health care. And our final term for the day is woman. When we say woman, we are referring to transgender, gender expansive, non-binary, and cisgender folks who identify as women. All women are women. And there's work happening to undo the default that woman refers to cis women exclusively. Some communities differentiate by saying woman and cis woman to shift the default use and to avoid the use of woman spelled with an X. So again, uh, you know, when we're saying woman and when we're saying men, we're being inclusive of any person who identifies as a woman or a man. We hope you've all learned a lot about respecting and using pronouns today and gender identity, and just kind of term of definitions to help you navigate conversations and just be more mindful of what are the most appropriate and respectful terms to use when engaging with folks, and just helping to practice dignity, respect, and compassion to people you interact with.
Okay, before we go, we want to give you reminders about COVID-19 and vaccines. If you've already gotten vaccinated, congratulations. You've taken a really important step to preventing yourself, your loved ones, and your communities from illness. The Delta variant is soaring across the United States at the moment, and it is totally understandable why you might want to keep wearing your mask. The vaccine isn't 100% effective. More contagious variants are spreading, and there are very few protocols in place to actually verify that folks around you are vaccinated. Keep on staying alert. If you haven't been vaccinated and you're looking for an appointment, Whitman-Walker Health has COVID-19 vaccines available. Everyone ages 12 and up are eligible to receive the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine, and everyone ages 16 and up are eligible to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. Please reach out to us at 202-207-2480 to make an appointment. If you're having trouble making an appointment with us, for DC residents, you can find information on COVID-19 vaccine walk-up locations and eligibility at vaccine.dc.gov or by calling 1-855-363-0333. Track the speed of COVID-19 vaccine lines by visiting coronavirus.dc.gov/don't wait. For Maryland residents, learn more about the Maryland vaccine distribution process and schedule a vaccination appointment at covidlink.maryland.gov or by calling 855-634-6829. If you live in Prince George's County, visit their vaccination registration portal here. If you live in Montgomery County, visit their vaccination portal here. Or call 240-777-0311 to schedule an appointment. For Virginia residents, learn more about the Virginia vaccine distribution process and schedule a vaccination appointment or at vaccine.virginia.gov or by calling 877-829-4682. If you haven't been vaccinated and you're not looking for an appointment, please continue to follow CDC's guidelines for mask wearing, quarantining, social distancing, and the like. It is very important that you get the vaccine. Discuss COVID precautionary measures with those around you. Be mindful of masks and keeping your distance, especially when you do not know whether a person has been vaccinated or not. Remember to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Whitman-Walker, and checking our website, whitman-walker.org, for the most up-to-date information on our services and more COVID-19 resources and general Whitman-Walker services. Please call us at 202-797-4439. Follow some of our programs and WWH Family at Real Talk _ and No Filter DC.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Corey. One thing, the Virginia website for vaccines is vaccinate.virginia.gov. And then also, we didn't highlight this earlier, but if you want to schedule an HIV or STI testing appointment, call that same number for Walker. It's 202-797-4439. Again, that's 202-797-4439. You can schedule an appointment for HIV or STI testing or even pregnancy testing if you're a young person here in DC. But thank you all so much and happy Friday.